Welcome to the Bodega Cat Podcast with Christina Ng. Over the next hour, you'll hear from guest experts from a variety of different backgrounds, with specialties pertaining to pets and humans alike. Now, here is Christina.
Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in today. This is the Bodega Cat Podcast, and my name is Christina. I'll be your host. Today, we have a very special guest. Her name is Kristen Shea. Did I pronounce that right, Kristen?
You did.
Okay. All right. Excellent. So Kristen is a spiritual coach and healer, helping women break free from fear and patterns that keep them stuck so they can reclaim their confidence, speak their truth, and step into leadership. Her work focuses on helping women overcome the fear of being seen, align with their purpose, and launch or expand their mission-led business. Kristen guides women to rise with purpose, create financial freedom, and build lives and businesses that feel aligned and unstoppable. Wow, that's a tall order there. Good for you.
Thank you.
So I want to first thank you for coming onto the podcast, and thank you for becoming a Bodega Cat member. It was very nice meeting you in person, and could talk a little bit about that if you want, about your experience with the Healing Center, but you don't have to. But let's start with your journey. I'm always interested in the origin stories of people. Where were you at? How did you get to where you're at now? And how did you come into your mission, I guess you could say, for women in particular, sounds like.
Yeah, absolutely. First, I had an amazing experience at your healing center. It was really beautiful.
Thank you.
I've been into a few different of the EES systems, and I came across yours when I was searching for something locally, and I loved the name of your center. So when I visited, I had such a great experience. So if anyone's listening and hasn't been, I highly recommend it. It was really good, and I'll definitely be back for more.
Oh, thank you. So just briefly, for those who don't know what the EE system is, do you want to kind of introduce the system to them a little bit, to my audience?
Sure. You probably actually have much more knowledge than I do. My understanding of it is that it's scalar energy frequencies that are being broadcast into the room and throughout the center. And I know from my own personal experience, when I discovered it, it was more for physical healing of the body. And so altering the frequencies within each of my different organ systems. So when I first started going, I would come into the center and I would immediately just feel my whole nervous system relax. My body would relax. And I typically do 2-hour sessions, and I would go into some of the deepest meditative states while I'm in the center. And then I also noticed spiritual benefits as well, like not just the meditation aspect, but I felt like I was able to connect to a higher level of consciousness while there. So for me, I understand the scalar frequencies to just be so healing on so many levels, but I don't know the exact science behind it. You actually might be a better person to explain that, Christina.
Yeah, one of the things I like about the EE system, and I'm not a scientist or a doctor or anything, but if you look at the system, I have 4 units, and other centers have 12, 24, 36, and it goes by increments of 4 screens. And so if you look at the screen, you see colors, you see sometimes the screen might go fast, sometimes it might go slow. It's got light in there. And one of the things that I like about it is that if you study the chakras have different colors, and that's what the color therapy in the EE system targets. So it targets different colors in the chakras as well as the organs as well. And I think that's why it's so effective with the physical aspect of it. With the frequency, you have, you got lower vibrational frequencies, which is like all the negative energies, sickness, illness, negative emotions like anger, shame, and all that stuff. Those are very slow in terms of frequencies. And when the screen goes slow, it targets the healing in that area. But it also goes fast, and the fast frequency targets the higher vibrational energy, which is the spiritual aspect, which is your heart, crown chakra, heart chakra, forehead chakra, uh, the third eye chakra. So those frequencies are higher vibrational frequencies, and they go very, very, very fast. And when you see the screen going fast, they're targeting healing in that area. And then you have the light therapy, which targets your cell and DNA because they're made of light. And it's just an amazing technology, in my opinion, from what I can, from my studies and stuff. And then the thing that I really like is the scalar, because the scalar is the non-physical part of the healing, which is the spiritual part. And what it does, it heals you on a physical, emotional, mental level, but it also heals you on a spiritual level. And I think that's why some people, especially people like you who are sensitive to energy, can really tap into that healing, the spiritual aspect. So people who are going through a lot of physical illness, like cancer or, arthritis or whatever, they might not have that. They might not experience that because they have to clean out the lower vibrational energies of the illness first. I don't know if I'm making any sense at all, but
You are.
yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's great that you're experiencing this. I always get excited when people um, tell me about their experience on the spiritual aspect. That's pretty exciting. So
Yeah, I love it. And your room is set up for a spiritual experience, which I love because I've been to other centers, as I mentioned, and it's just kind of a room with chairs and the screens. But I love that yours is set up for the spiritual experience. The prayers that you have, the Astara books that you have, like you have things that are set up to create the spiritual experience as soon as you walk in. So it's almost like you kind of start to tap into that energy before you even experience the scalar waves.
oh, thank you. That's very nice. Yeah. So tell me about a little bit about your own spiritual journey, if you will, from what you did before, and the journey and the process, and how you came to be where you're at today.
Sure. So I've been on a spiritual journey really my entire life. I was actually a very spiritual child. And although I didn't fully understand it, I always felt very different than everyone in my family, different than my friends. I never really had the same interests as everybody. Like I always just preferred to spend my time in nature. Even as a kid, like I used to talk to the trees and the birds and just always felt this deeper connection. And I always had some inner knowing and some inner gifts, but just as often happens, I started to shut those down in my childhood just because I didn't understand them. And I don't think anyone in my family understood them. And so, again, although I was on the spiritual journey, I wasn't fully tapped in. And it was in my 20s that I started to reawaken to that true aspect of not just living a spiritual lifestyle, but really tapping back into my own gifts, my own inner wisdom. And I found myself just in this really conflicting place because I was living a very traditional life. I was working in corporate. I was trying to, striving to climb that corporate ladder. I wanted to achieve success, and I was just trying to find my way in the world. And in all of this, I realized how programmed I was, both by society and family and expectations, and, living my life in a way that was just truly not in alignment with me. And so when I was in my early 30s, I moved to California. And when I came out here, it really helped catapult my spiritual journey just because there was more like-minded individuals. I'm from New Hampshire, so I had been living in New Hampshire at the time. And so there wasn't a lot of community or support in that area for the experience that I was having. So California really helped open my eyes because I just feel like there's so much available out here. And in this process, I was just coming to terms with the fact that, like, wow, I've really been living my life to someone else's standards. I've never really wanted to participate in the corporate structures of the society. I've never wanted that traditional job. It's never really jived with me. And so when I moved to California, I was 32. And I was kind of hitting the reset button on my life, starting over. So I was leaving New Hampshire. I wanted to leave that traditional structure behind. and really go on this journey to recreate the life that I thought was more aligned. And so I started to do that. And again, still deeply on the healing journey. And what I missed was I didn't really take the time to get to know myself or understand like the programming that had been at play. And so much of my own personality and identity had been shaped through childhood, as all of ours are. And so much of my personality and who I was still operating in these programs, but trying to recreate this new life. So I came out here to be a publicist, and I was really excited for that. And I got here right before COVID hit. So a few months after I got here, the world kind of shut down. And in that time, I went on an even deeper exploration of myself, and I started to work with different plant medicines. And so I worked with combo quite a bit. I worked with ayahuasca, mushrooms, just these deeper, more psychedelic experiences to understand myself, understand more of what was out there. And it definitely cracked something open in me, but I still was not fully accessing like who I truly was, because again, I had no idea how much of my personality was no longer mine. I had grown up in a household that was very codependent, and so I was super codependent. I was a people pleaser. I was afraid of what the world would think of me, what people would think of me, what my family would think of me. I really wanted to be seen as somebody who was like successful and achieving, because that felt like it would make me worthy. And so I was still kind of lost in this cycle, but still on a deeply spiritual journey. And then over the next few years, I realized that I had actually not done the healing I needed to do. Like I was almost using the plant medicines to discover instead of doing the discovery journey within. And I was in this narcissistic dynamic that's been present in my family for a really long time. And all of a sudden, one day, I felt like my soul was dying. Like if you were to look on the outside, my life probably looked great. I had a very successful career, a beautiful life in Beverly Hills, and a life that, again, on the outside probably looked great. Like things weren't like horrible, but my soul literally felt like she was dying. And I was experiencing chronic health issues, all these things that are communicating to me that I'm out of alignment. And so about 2 years ago, this time of year, actually, I went on some spiritual travel. So I went to Kauai in Hawaii, which is a very Lemurian starseed activated center. And so I went there for a retreat, and then I came back. And in October, I went to Mount Shasta. I had this incredible healing session where I was calling all parts of my soul and just back to me. So much was happening. And when I came back, I was like, I cannot live this life any longer. I don't know how to get out of it, but I know I can't live this life any longer. And so I came back and I gave notice to my whole family, to friends, to the career, to everything. And I didn't have a backup plan at all. I had no financial safety net. I didn't have anything planned. I was just like, I know that this has to end. And so as I was in the process of ending it, I was trying to, find another job that would be in more alignment while I discovered what my purpose was. And my guides just kept telling me, like, you can't create while you're still in this dynamic. Like, you have to walk away from this narcissist. You have to go no contact with some of these people. And so I just kind of ended up in this place where I had to hit the reset button on my life again at 37. And in that moment, I just remember thinking to myself, like, if I'm going to hit the reset button all over again, there's got to be a different way to do this to actually get to who I truly am and what I'm here to do, because I just felt so confused. And that is the biggest turning point of my life. I left everything behind, and again, no financial safety net and no backup plan and no idea what I was doing, and was just really trusting my guides to lead me. And they absolutely did. In this process, I was, wanting to become some form of a coach. I knew I was here to help. I knew I had healing abilities. I knew I had psychic abilities, but I'd never used them before. So I was also afraid to share them, because I think there's always that part of all of us that's just kind of like, what if this isn't real? What if we're crazy? Like, what if I'm not a psychic intuitive? What if, I'm not the healer? Like, what if I'm making this up, or what if it's just not real? And so I still was kind of rebuilding from the old life, and I was trying to find clients to do PR so I could have some income while trying to figure things out. And one day my guides were just telling me, like, you have to post your channeled messages on TikTok. And I had been channeling for a long time, but again, had no proof it was real because I didn't share my gifts. And I fought that because I was afraid to be seen. I was for sure afraid to share my spiritual gifts. I didn't know how to go about any of this. I was still highly codependent and trying to just figure out like who I was and what the next steps were. And so I kind of was trying to bargain with my guides and be like, okay, I'll post those messages once I get life figured out. Like I need to get life figured out first. And my guides kept pushing me. And then what happened is all of a sudden, everything in my life stopped. So all the clients, the freelance PR clients I had been taking on, all of them stopped emailing me back. Nobody was paying their invoices. All of the leads I had weren't working. Like everything in my life just stopped and it came to this halt. And even my guides were silent. And so I was praying to God that day and I was just like, help me, show me the way. Like I didn't start my whole life over again to like have everything shatter. And I had rent due in a couple of days. And because nobody had paid their invoices, I didn't have the money for my rent. And I was just in like this rock bottom panic mode. And my guides are like, post your channel messages on TikTok. And I felt so angry in that moment because for me, I was like, that's not going to generate rent. I need something right now I can do that's going to give me money in the next couple of days. And so I fought with it all day. And then finally in the afternoon, I was like, there's nothing else for me to do. I'm at rock bottom. I have no choice but to just surrender and listen to this guidance. So I shared my first channeled message on TikTok, which I was so afraid of. It took me 5.5 hours to record a 2-minute video because I would freeze. I would get halfway through the message and be like, is this even real? And go into panic and all of these, blocks would come up. But I finally hit post. And in the moment I did that, I did feel an energetic shift. And then within 3 hours, all of a sudden, all of my clients started paying their invoices. All of my leads started getting back to me. It was like this window had opened. And I was just like, okay, I see what you're doing, God. I get this. And then from there, I was like, I will post whatever you want me to post as long as you keep the money flowing, right? Because I was still highly in survival mode right now. And so I keep posting and I keep posting. And then my guides are like, you need to offer personal sessions, personal readings for people. And I didn't want to do that. So I kept avoiding that. And the same thing happened again. A month later, everything stopped. And so I knew the drill at this point and I posted offering readings. And none of this makes sense. Like my path kind of defies logic because it was such a spiritual experience, but I think I had like maybe 70 followers on TikTok at this point. I had been posting daily pretty much for about a month. I didn't have a following. I was like, why do you want me to post for personal readings? And so I didn't think anyone was going to book with me. And I didn't have systems in place. If people did want to book, I basically threw up a Calendly link and a Venmo link. And I hit the post button and within 24 hours, I had over 78 people book with me for that next week.
Wow.
Wild.
That
Like,
is pretty wild.
it didn't even make sense that many people would book. So I was really tapping into the spiritual aspect of surrendering my life to the divine and following that guidance because they were just trying to get me in touch with my own soul's blueprint, right? Like what my soul came here to do. But because I had put, no systems in place, my calendar would be booked out for like 16 hours a day, just channeling and reading. And I had no system to kind of even see who had paid and who hadn't, because I really didn't think anybody would book. And this was also the first time that I was doing any reading. So I was in fear about that. Like, what if what I'm doing isn't true? What if I get on a call with these people and my gifts don't show up? Or what if I say things and it's like not true or doesn't resonate with them? So I was just in a lot of fear, but I had to surrender to the process. And my first few calls went amazing. And people were like, this is so spot on. I was, getting loved ones' names that were coming through, like very specific information. And so I consider that first week almost like a spiritual boot camp of learning my gifts and believing my gifts, because that outside validation of someone being able to say back to me, like, yes, that was, my past loved one's name, or that was the exact experience that I had, or yes, this is exactly, the message I needed, whatever it was. And that was, the turning point of my journey where I then fully embarked on a spiritual career. And in that process is how I went through the visibility journey. And the reason I'm so passionate about helping people and women specifically overcome the fear of being seen is I know that the visibility journey, and not just visibility, authentic visibility of who you truly are, unlocks everything within you, because I think most of us don't know our true identities. I think we're so shaped by society and so shaped by family and friends and culture and all the things that, start to mold us from a very young age of who we are and who it's okay to be. And then I think we kind of find ourselves at this space and time where we're just like, who are we? This cannot be the life I'm meant to live. Or even if you're on the right path, it's how do you show up as yourself, right? Because overcoming the fear of being seen is the fear of being seen in every part of your life, in your relationships. It's setting boundaries, it's speaking up, it's using your voice, it's speaking up in the corporate meeting to share your ideas. But so many of us don't. We don't know how to set boundaries. We don't know how to share our ideas because what if nobody likes them? And so that became the journey. And I saw through the visibility journey that you really unlock your true soul's blueprint when it's done correctly, right? It's not just about hitting post on the content. It's about becoming who you truly are and then being able to authentically live that in every moment of your life and then share what you came here to share with the world, because every person on this planet is a creator. Yet so many of us are not creating, and then we're creating and we're not sharing. But that's not the journey we came here to share, whether it's our story or our experience or knowledge, whatever it is, we're all here to create and share. And so part of my goal is to reconnect that, right? Reconnect us to the energy of being creators, creating our own realities, but also creating the thing that we came here to share with the world. And that's kind of a quick overview of my journey.
That is an incredible journey and story. Thank you for sharing that. I think it's amazing that, as I look at the geopolitical, and I'm not going to make a political statement, but
Sure.
humanity needs to rise up and transcend itself, and we're kind of getting there. But I always believe that, if all of us tap into our higher soul and to the divine,
Yeah.
like 80% or maybe even 90% of the world's problems will go away.
I so agree with that. We're so disconnected in so many ways, but as soon as you start to tap in, it's like you transcend these lower vibrational things where we find ourselves in these like polarized arguments or left versus right or hot versus cold or whatever the different things that are happening, on the world stage. But at our true soul essence, we are love, we're light. And if we can reconnect to that, I mean, the changes that we can make in this world would be massive, and they would actually be really quick too.
Yeah, I agree. But it's still kind of interesting to see it play out. It's
For
like
sure.
watching a movie. That's what I kind of look for. So
Yeah.
that's incredible. I know for me, I kind of went through some of the fears myself. I was a hospice nurse for over 25 years, and nursing, they're always short of nurses, and you can always find jobs and stuff like that. But I always thank my higher soul in its infinite wisdom to take me out of that medical system and to really put me in a situation where I was in the same spot as you. I had no financial safety net, but I knew I had to, resign or quit or whatever it was because of the situation. And I had like 2 or 3 jobs at the time. I was working like crazy. But and I had to step away from those environments and the financial security just so I can have faith. And that really, really tested my faith to kind of rely on my higher soul, to rely on God or whatever you want to call it, to know that, that I'm going to be taken care of. And that was a hard journey for me. But it took many years. It didn't just happen overnight. I was, praying to my guides every single night. Every time I would sit down to pay my bills, I was almost crying because I didn't know where the money was coming from. But you know what? The bills got paid. Somehow or another, it got paid. And it just kind of helped me tune in more to the divine aspect. And it really is a journey. And you talk about, for your journey, you talk about reset, that we kind of And I think once we initially awaken, and it sounds like for you it was in your 20s, you still have many different initiations or awakenings afterwards. And I don't know if that's how you experience, but it's a growing process, it's growing pains. And yeah, so it's kind of exciting. It's very exciting.
It is. And I totally agree with you. I think we have multiple initiations, multiple awakenings. It just feels like an unfoldment as we connect more and more to the divine, to our higher selves, and understanding like we are always provided for, even in the moments it doesn't. Every moment I look back on when it didn't feel like it in 2020 hindsight, I'm like, oh my God, I was so protected. It was so provided for. But I feel like even right now, I continue to have these new levels of awakening. Like I don't know that ever ends. I think it's just this ongoing period. And I actually think the financial journey is a journey that helps most people reconnect to the divine because we're so reliant on finances here, right? It's one of the biggest fears is, are we going to be able to take care of ourselves? And so many of us think our finances come from outside of us, right? Like one of the things I always say is I say I'm on God's payroll. And so
That's wonderful. I like that.
it's a good saying, right?
Yeah.
And it took me a while. The first times I said that, I didn't believe it, but I wanted to feel that. Because I think the financial journey is like, we think money comes from outside of us. We think it has to come from the corporate structure or it has to come from our clients or our business. And it's like, it doesn't. It comes from God, and God will certainly flow it through any channel that you open. In order to receive. I know anytime I'm in alignment with my soul, with my higher self, and, in God's will, like I'm so divinely provided for always in ways that don't make sense. That's why I always say my path defies logic, but it only defies logic because I was able to surrender long enough to the divine to allowing that reconnection to happen. So I think finances and that financial journey is actually really powerful because it truly does show you that I think it's actually a gateway to reconnecting to the divine in many ways.
Yeah, I think so. And when you think about it, finances is tied to survival.
Yeah.
If we're in the survival mode, if we're always looking for food, or when you think about poverty-stricken countries, if you're in survival mode, you don't have the time or the energy to work on your emotions or even to think about God or any kind of higher spiritual concepts, right? Because you're always scrounging for food or whatever. And finances is part of the survival mechanism. So if we're able to transcend that, and for me, I've been working on as a spiritual practice is to visualize a world where there is no hunger and there is no finances. Well, finances still kind of needed for trade and stuff, but maybe having a self-sufficient community or something like that, where we can and you talk about God's payroll. God's payroll doesn't have to be money. It can be resources, it can be relationships, it can come in many different forms. The same thing with the concept of abundance. Think of abundance as, oh, give me a lot of money, but no, it could be many different non-financial and non-physical aspects, of abundance. So that's something to think about too.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think prosperity is even just in reconnecting to the divine, right? Like that too. Yeah, it can be in so many, it's in health. In
right, exactly. So when you said when you were in your 20s, you had a spiritual awakening, was there a specific trigger that happened, or was it really, or was it subtle?
It was a little bit of both. In my 20s, I was caught up in addiction and wanting to get out of that cycle, unsure how to. And God guided me actually. And I wasn't I mean, I've always believed in God, but I wasn't that deeply connected to God at the time. But God, my guides guided me to actually get sober by myself, to not go to a rehab center or anything like that, but to do it at home by myself, and guided me through the entire process. And as that was lifting from me, that in itself started to reestablish me to a divine connection. And in that, I started to tap back into some of the resources that I had tapped into before. Like in my teens, I was very much about the law of attraction and manifestation and some of these other aspects. But through that addiction, I just kind of lost connection to everything. And so I started tapping back in and remembering like my power as a creator. So I got back into like reading the book The Secret and a lot of those different tools, and that started to reopen. And then I remember my psychic abilities expanding from there. So really getting sober in that time frame is what helped me like reconnect and start the process of remembering.
Mm. That's why I've never done drugs or drank, but my theory is that chemicals like that, and even prescription drugs, there's something in them that disconnects you from the divine source. And yeah.
1,000%. Mine, so I was addicted to opiates, and it started when I was 16. I had surgery, and there wasn't an epidemic yet at the time. I think maybe it was just starting, but my doctors were kind of irresponsible in their prescriptions. I mean, I was like 16 years old, and over a 2-month period had been prescribed like I had like hundreds and hundreds of Vicodins and Percocets.
Oh my gosh.
Because every time I would go in, they would write a new prescription, but I wasn't even done the other prescription. But I remember when I started taking them, at first it was just obviously for the pain relief. But then I remember one day I took it and I felt, the only way I can describe it is I never felt high. I felt normal. Like I was like, oh, is this what it's supposed to feel like? Like I would have energy, my brain would work more clearly. And now I just recognize that as I was probably like severely lacking dopamine and serotonin and some things that I needed that was hitting a receptor for. But I remember just being like, oh, I feel like a normal person. Like I'm just better at life when I'm taking this. It wasn't like I just want to get so high or tune out. I felt better. And then of course, as that continues, it's like now I've got the physical component of being physically reliant on it. And so that was a kind of off and on, but it was in my 20s where it like took hold and I was truly physically addicted, like would go into withdrawal if I didn't have it. And it does, whatever those chemicals do, it just shuts off everything. And to me, I mean, I don't know what your take is on spiritual warfare, but to me, it's a form of spiritual warfare to try to disconnect people from the divine. I think there's, light and dark and everything. So I understand that those medicines are very important in probably some cases, but I do think there's like a lot of darkness and corruption in it. And it starts to, kind of take on a life of its own in that sense.
I agree. I think it's been overused in terms of prescription, like doctors over prescribing.
Yeah.
And I don't think, and sometimes I kind of wonder because you hear a lot of people talk about, oh, how evil these doctors are. And I kind of wonder, do they know what they're doing, or are they so indoctrinated in medical school that they just kind of not even think about it, like, oh, patient comes in pain, okay, write a prescription. And to a certain extent, the patient kind of expects it. Like, you visit a doctor and he's like, oh, you don't need a pill. And patient's like, what? I want a pill. I gotta have a pill before I walk out that door. It's almost like, and you're right. My teacher says 80% of our beliefs are from other people.
Yeah.
Maybe even 85. And these are so ingrained in us that we don't even think about it.
Oh, I mean, for sure. Like, and I think there's light and dark in everything. So I think in the medical profession, I think 90% of doctors mean well and don't realize what they're doing and are genuinely trying to help. And they're combating their own, issues within the system of like being overworked, not having enough time per patient. Like there's and so many things that go
in survival mode almost.
Yeah, totally. And then I think there are a small percentage of doctors that, were influenced by the pharmaceutical companies and the kickbacks that they could have gotten for different things. So I think there's a little bit of both there. But I do believe that most people who are in the medical industry actually do want to help. And I think they're just stuck in a program that was designed. But yeah, so I think, Yeah, I mean, everything is light and dark. There's light in every single thing, and there's a little bit of darkness there too. And we're in that process of the awakening. But yeah, I mean, so much of who we are is not us. And it's not until we start to truly realize that and look at that and start to think like, wow, all of this that I've taken isn't mine. If you're growing up as a child and you're sick and your parents give you an antibiotic or they give you an Advil, like, of course you start to get programmed that when you don't feel good, you take a pill. Of course you take on their money beliefs, or of course, like it's crazy how much we take on that is not ours. And I think that's such an important part of the spiritual journey of not just this like love and light aspect, but like really diving into who am I and like what part of this is actually me.
And sometimes spiritual awakening and spiritual journey is not pretty.
Most of the time.
Yeah, because you're really getting into the dark part and embracing that dark part of yourself. And that's not easy to do. And a lot of people probably won't want to do it. So,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, it's uncomfortable. I mean, I know in the moment that I realized I had no true identity, that for me, again, I was very codependent and grew up with narcissism and was in that whole family dynamic was continuing throughout my life. And so I was such a people pleaser and so codependent that when my rock bottom hit, there was a realization that I think maybe 5% of who I was my true identity. And that was a really wild place to be, because I just had this realization of like, I have no idea who I actually am when I'm not existing for other people or playing the role of the daughter, the aunt, the sister, the corporate executive, the whatever. Like, so much of who I was this identity that had been shaped by something that wasn't even me. I didn't know how to go about discovering who that was. I was just like, how do you figure out who you are? What does that even look like? And yeah, I think so many of us are operating in that place. And when you get there, it is uncomfortable. And there's not a lot of resources that really dive deep into who you are. There's a lot of spiritual resources, but I don't think there's a lot on the identity aspect to truly, connect to your higher self and to your soul.
Well, I think that, yeah, the spiritual journey is so incredibly personal.
So personal. And it's so different for everybody. And it's so, there's just, and it's hard to navigate because we are always looking for something outside of ourselves. So there's like this kind of paradox that exists where it's like you need something to kind of guide you on where to go, depending on your level of connection. If you've reestablished your connection somewhat to yourself and the divine, you'll be guided in just going within. Actually, everything I teach, I'm not religious in any way, but everything I teach is about Jesus and Mary Magdalene's teachings of everything is to go within. It's never going outside of yourself for anything. And so I didn't know that at the time. That's why I teach it now, is because it's the journey that I went through, and going back within and getting to know myself in ways I didn't know how. And a lot of getting to know yourself is taking the masks off that you don't realize you're wearing. So there's like this whole process. It's like, I think it's what the true ego death is, although I think the phrase ego death is, kind of overused and not always used in the right ways.
Yeah. Yeah. Now I'm kind of, there is and I've said this in other podcasts, but there is a French philosopher called Descartes. What he did was he locked himself in a room and then he went through all his belief systems and challenged each and every one of them. And sometimes for me now, I kind of do that, especially things that have been thrown around that are very common, that we think it's a common thing to say. I have to kind of stop myself and said, okay, is this somebody else's thinking, or how true is it? And kind of go through that step of maybe breaking it down, and see, is it really the truth? I don't know if I'm making any sense, but.
No, you are. And I think I think honestly, a lot of the awakening journey is literally questioning every thought you have.
Yeah.
And I know in my deepest part of the journey, that was a huge part, because I don't even know that if I had locked myself in a room, I would have known what my belief system. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know.
I don't know if that's a true story, but it sounds pretty interesting.
It's really cool. kind of something I've always wanted to do. I've always wanted to go to those like cave retreats where you go
Yeah,
to the cave for 7 days, dark, silent, just to go.
meditate.
I've always wanted to do that. But yeah, I think you have to just in your day to day question every thought you're having. Is that mine? Where did that come from? Does that support me? Is that thought of light? We have so many thoughts per second that it's like you just have to catch
Oh, yeah.
question
Yeah.
them.
And I don't know how they come up with numbers, but they said a person has like 10,000 thoughts per second. I'm like, where'd they come up with that number?
I know,
That is,
I wonder how they did figure that out.
I know. But it is very true though, and we populate our thoughts all the time, every time we get on the news, watch the news, when we talk with people, and, these are all I guess you could say subconscious programming in a way, or unconscious programming that we don't really think about. We just think, oh, it's a common thing that, you know, people talk about all the time, but
Yeah. No, our subconscious is recording it all. I mean, I use an example that like if you're watching TV, say a reality TV show comes on and there, is some drama going on where they're mad at one person, your subconscious could immediately record like, oh, if I go against the group, I'm
Mhm.
going to be, they're going to be mad at me. And you could be at the grocery store and checkout and you overhear a conversation. And even though your conscious may not pay mind to it, your subconscious is recording all of that.
Yeah, that's amazing. It's amazing what the mind is and what it can do. That's why I always encourage people to meditate because it clears out all the junk, that you've kind of accumulated during the day or the week or whatever, and just start with a clean slate, meditation. So,
Yeah, just an emptying a clean slate is so important.
so let's talk a little bit about your services. I know you mentioned briefly, but do you want to do a little bit more deep dive into it and kind of introduce what your services are to the audience?
Sure. Essentially, so I do transformation and visibility coaching. And so my whole goal is to guide people back to themselves through the visibility journey. And breaking free from every thought and limitation and everything that has held you back. Because to me, the visibility journey, again, isn't just posting content or getting on stage, it's becoming yourself. So the fear of being seen is the fear of being yourself, and often the fear of not even knowing who you are. And so I've created a 90-day program that takes people through this process where it's shedding all of the masks. It's questioning every belief that you have. It's really getting to know like who you are on a deep soul level, reconnecting to yourself, reconnecting to the divine, coming back into that sovereignty that is, a part of every soul, and that we truly do get to create our reality here and the conscious ways to do it. It's not just about manifesting. It's truly about going within and re-anchoring in Christ consciousness through discovering it within ourselves, which I truly believe is the full journey here. And so that's the journey I take women on in a 90-day program. So I work with some women one-to-one. That's an option if they want to do one-to-one coaching. But I also have a community because I think it's really important to have support on this journey. I know I was alone on mine. And so when you're having these like kind of shattering moments and all of your beliefs and the things that you've known and maybe the people you used to align with, it's kind of falling apart as you get to know yourself. That can be a difficult journey to go on. So I've created a community of women where there's, daily support within a community portal. So we're all connecting. I also think the divine feminine is the key to bringing Christ consciousness back onto this planet. I think we all came here and I want to just reconnect us in that way. And in my community, the first 90 days are on that visibility journey, breaking free. And then, of course, some people fly through it depending on where they're at. And some people it can take longer. Everyone's journey is different, but it is a blueprint to take you there in 90 days. And then from there, I show women how to get like fiercely visible with their message, whether it's recording the podcast or creating the content or getting into the media or launching their spiritual business, or, maybe it's sharing their art and their music, like whatever their thing is here to create, it's reconnecting them to that soul blueprint and what they're here to create, and then helping them get it out there and everything that comes with that. Because the visibility journey doesn't end after 90 days. You get rid of your fear fears, but then when it comes time to take those aligned actions, a lot of those blocks can come back up. So it's a really beautiful space for women to come together, overcome these fears, and have support along that entire spiritual journey.
Is it all women or do you have men in that journey as well?
All women. So the community I've done is just for women. If men want to do one-to-one work, they can certainly book with me, but the community aspect is just for women.
I think I really love the fact that the energy of Mary Magdalene is coming back. You know, I'm not religious like you,
Yeah.
uh, but I think that our concept of God or Christian Judeo Christian concept of God is not really what we think it is. Um, I if God were for me, I would call my God a she
Mhm.
because nature is beautiful, but really it's an it because it's pure energy, it's pure light, and pure energy doesn't have a gender. Only in our dimension we have a gender.
Right.
But yeah, so I mean it might trigger some of my audience out there, but that's kind of how I feel, what I think. And it's not about, you know, a form where God with a beard, white beard looking down on us. It's really a very fluid ebb and flow. I think the Chinese or the Buddhists described it best. It's like an ebb and flow, yin and yang, and it's very fluid. You've got light, then you got dark, and then you got light again, and it's a law of cycle. They call it the law of cycle. And that's how I think of how God is. And I always thought if you want to understand God, then look at nature. Nature is full of how the universe works, and it's beautiful. It's beautiful. And I don't understand how scientists can say, "Oh, I study science and there is no God." How can you not say that? It's just God's fingerprint everywhere.
Right.
Everywhere. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with you. Yeah, I'm kind of in that same boat. I don't subscribe to any religion. I think there's beauty in every religion. I think there's darkness in every religion. I think there's beauty in New Age spirituality, and I also think there's darkness there. Like it's like you're saying, there's a little bit of light and dark in everything. And it's really up to us to kind of navigate what that is, but God is within each and every single one of us, whether or not we acknowledge it. God is within us already. We're a part of God. That's why we're here. Everything is God, everything. And nature is such a direct reflection of that. But I would assume kind of in the same way some of the medical industry has been indoctrined, probably the science, aspects have too.
Yeah, well, they said we have the divine spark within us.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's our connection to the divine. And I think, that's why a lot of the quote unquote bad people doesn't want us to connect with that because we're very powerful. I think we're here. I This is my opinion. We are here as a humanity to learn to remember who we are. Number one, that's our test. That's our school, if you will. And number two, we're here to learn or relearn how to manifest because we've forgotten how to do that. So,
Yeah, I agree with you. I think, yeah, first and foremost, to remember who we are. And I agree with you. It's so funny. I talk so much about the manifestation because I do think New Age has taken it to a place it's not necessarily supposed to be. I do believe, with Mary Magdalene's teachings and even Jesus's teachings, we manifest from within. And we have this incredible ability to create, and we don't, because there's so much programming here. So I think it is all about reclaiming our power and our sovereignty as the true creators that we are, and to then begin to create and experience the heaven on earth that we came here to experience. We didn't come here to suffer. Once we remember, we're meant to step into that creator role.
yeah, that's beautiful. I can't wait. I'm very excited about what's coming. You hear a lot about the golden age and all that stuff. And I'm very excited. And I can't wait till humanity gets to a certain point in consciousness where we can really see the manifestation and the heaven on earth part. That's very exciting to me. So
Yeah.
I hope it happens in my lifetime. But I don't know. I don't know. We'll have to see.
Well, we are in the age of Aquarius now, so I think we'll see big acceleration towards it for sure.
Yeah. Well, good. So we have a few minutes left. Is there any topics that you want to talk about that I haven't touched on or asked? And maybe we can close with words of wisdom that you want to impart on on our audience, and where can people find you and stuff like that. And we'll close with that.
Perfect. No, I think you covered all the topics. I think this was a really fun and insightful conversation. I know I deeply enjoyed it, so I hope that your audience will as well. Words of wisdom. Words of wisdom. That's a good question.
Well, what are your guides saying? I know they can be talkative.
They're
I
very,
know my guides are.
they're
They
very.
got a sense of humor and they're very talkative.
That's actually a good point. I think we take your guides way too seriously. They do have a good sense of humor. Right now, my guides are really focusing on remind people of their power, remind them to take time to look into what they have consciously or unconsciously taken on, remind them that there is so much more to this life than what they're experiencing right now, and that they're really saying, maybe there's some people who are experiencing some hardship who are going to be listening to this. But one of the things that they're saying right now is remember anything that's crumbling is only making room for something better. And to just trust that your guides will always take care of you and always catch you. Yeah, it does feel like there might be some audience members who are who are maybe just going through a struggle right now. So this is what's coming through in my channel is just so much love and encouragement for what people are experiencing and to know that they truly have the power within. And if you're in a moment of struggle, don't go in as much as you can. Try not to go into that survival pattern of figuring things out. If you take a few moments of silence in whatever way that looks like for you, it could be a walking meditation or, maybe even a sitting meditation, whatever it is that gets you out of your mind for a moment. There is divine guidance that is always available to you to lead you through that path of least resistance, and that there's something really beautiful on the other side.
Yeah, and I also want to remind people that you have your guides, call on them. I know when I was going through my financial, I don't know, crisis, I guess you could call it, I called on my guides all the time,
Yeah.
And fairies. I love those fairies. Fairies and leprechauns, I call them, and they come. They come. I mean, I don't see them physically, but in my third eye, I do.
Yeah.
And if not, imagine them. Imagine them, blessing. I do that. I imagine them blessing my checkbook, putting money in my checkbook, paying my bills, and they help me through it. So you're not alone. You're really not alone at all. So
No, not at all. There's always something, some divine wisdom, divine connection, something there. But yeah, asking for help is the most important. And I always say to people, be specific, delegate to them as if they're your employees. They want to help that much. Like be so specific with what you want and need help with, because they want to help you. They're just waiting to be asked.
yeah, and you have to ask.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have to ask. That's the key. So
Yeah. And
all
if
right.
it wants to further connect, you can find me at the Kristen Shea on TikTok and Instagram. It's TheKristenShea. And I know that you'll put links connected to this episode. So happy to connect with any of your audience.
Yes, and yes, I will put the links below with your TikTok page and your website and all that good stuff. So thank you so much, Kristen, for coming on. And I hope my audience enjoys. I know I've enjoyed this conversation very much. And I'm sure we could talk about many different other topics that we weren't able to touch on. But in due time, I think people are, humanity is making progress. And we just need to let things play out, because like the Bible, Ecclesiastes says, there's a time for everything. And I think our job as spiritual practitioners, if you could say that, is to work on ourselves, make sure that we are connected to the divine, so that we could help others. So, yeah. So anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this podcast, and we will be back soon with another one. Okay, bye-bye now.
Bye. Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to the Bodega Cat Podcast. Your host, Christina Ng, will join you here again next month. Until then, have a beautiful month.